The minute that it crashes, it's instantly disposed of because it has lost its power. Plus, further, if they bring it up again, it's a negative reminder, and it actually takes power away from them. So they won't use global warming ever again as a term on CNN because it removes power from their masters as we all sit around and chuckle at them. Again, does that make sense?
Absolutely. I'm so glad that I brought that up because for our listeners that is a much clearer example than my response, which was, hey, this is the way it has to work out, and our speaking about it only helps us smile more.
Correct. And it's true, all of the stuff. Look at the most powerful single individuals we've ever seen on this planet, and you'll see that they followed a particular rule set that we can also follow in our own way and to our own degree, and it gains us power. And I'm talking about Mahatma Gandhi, Martin Luther King. And these people said, I'm coming to get you. Here's why. I'll be there next Tuesday. I'm leaving Monday. Get ready. and they got ready, and they still went ahead and came and got them. And it's a question of how you proceed in this, but if you follow the rules that these guys use, non-cooperation, passive resistance, non-participation in evil acts, then you start instantly removing power from all of these guys. And it's we're coming to a head here, I think, where we're going to be faced with choices around the revolution meme in July. And those choices can lead us down basically two separate streams that diverge from each other. And in one, the use of violence, the falling back to violence out of rage and frustration, deprives us of power and actually gives the power back to the powers that be, simply because they're all set up to deal with violence. They know how to react to it. They've got all kinds of plans for it, but they can't react to the non-violent, non-cooperation, non-participation. And once that starts rolling, it has all kinds of ramifications, because something that's not really discussed too much is the vast number of mutinies that occurred within the British military power structure in India at the time that Mahatma Gandhi was going through the cleansing of India. And the British didn't mention the fact that most of their Indian, or a large percentage, say, except for the Sikhs and the Gurt and some other group, I can't think at the moment, they had 40 to 50% desertion rates. And then even more than that, they would get new people and they would desert. And they did it deliberately, where they got trained by the British after 4 or 5 weeks and all these techniques, became accepted, got uniforms, and then they would desert, because it cost their masters tons of money to replace them. And there were millions of willing Indians. And they got a couple of weeks of food and work out of it.
Beautiful.
So it's a matter of strategy and tactics there. However, we're really up to it this summer, I think, because there's going to be a convergence of effects all around us. You noticed the other day, I think it was on Friday, we got the first notice of the Earth-headed solar storm.
Right, and let us not interrupt you on that, so we'll take a quick break right now, very short. Beyond the Ordinary with Clif and Adventures in Future Viewing.
If we do not destroy ourselves, we will one day venture to the stars. For thousands of years, people have wondered about the universe. Did it stretch out forever, or was there a limit? From the Big Bang to black holes, from dark matter to a possible Big Crunch, our image of the universe today is full of strange sounding ideas.
How lucky we are to live in this time, the first moment in human history when we are, in fact, visiting other worlds. A still more glorious dawn awaits, not a sunrise, but a galaxy rise, a morning filled with 400 billion suns.
With the very Beyond the Ordinary Clif on Beyond the Ordinary. So, solar flares?
Well, actually a geomagnetic storm, slightly different than a solar flare, but because it's within the category of solar flares. But we've had this storm that we were warned about last Friday. Now, we note that last Friday we had like 22 large earthquakes. but the geomagnetic storm starts hitting. Supposed to hit yesterday and today, but we started seeing some component of it hit late Sunday, and by Monday we were up to over 400 earthquakes in the day. And then here it is on Tuesday, and we note we've got simultaneous antipolar mine collapses. You know, they've had a mine collapse in China as well as a mine collapse here in West Virginia. And this is a somewhat a significant, in my way of thinking, sign that we've got a level of geologic instability that should increase. I mean, I was actually talking about this with George Ure the other day, and basically I told him, George, go away, don't bug me. You know, come back and tell me when we've got 4,000 earthquakes a day, and then I'll be paying attention. However, we're starting to see some of the infrastructure effects of that, and that should be noted. That as we scale up in solar activity, we will also scale up in earthquake activity. And some of the stuff I've read in the early Sanskrit, which is to say the very early pre-Vedic Sanskrit descriptions of the time, show a period of time where in this one particular little region they were getting what we would think of as 7-point earthquakes every day. After it built up after a number of months, and then a lot of little ones every day. And we may actually get to that here, and it's expected as we move forward in a disturbed sun situation. So if it is correct that the mega sunspot cycle will cause us some level of major disruption in 2012, then it is expected as a precursor or as a necessary part of that we will see a scaling up of earthquakes and it wouldn't be constant. It would be up and down on a daily basis. But over time, we should see it to where we're getting up to the point where globally we might have 4,000 or 5,000 earthquakes of some significance in a day. If that is the case, if we ever get to that, then everybody can use that as a pretty sure temporal marker that the sun is getting close to popping off its larger cycle and swapping over, the end of the fifth Mayan cycle. So if we're correct about this, then the two major, well, there's actually a number of them, but the two major signs that we can look for as humans will be the angry sun face, which is lots of these prominences, maybe 50 or 60 or 70 or more filaments of these long-standing filaments, very unusual in our history, but now showing up. And we should also see a concurrent rise in earthquakes. Now, this is would be a very good indicator that, it's time to head for the hills or get your boat and get out on the water kind of a deal. I say it jokingly because I expect it to happen, but I hope it doesn't. But truly, that's what I'm looking for, is that if we get to a point where we've got all these earthquakes and I'm up here in a geologically sensitive area, and if I start shaking every day, well, that's going to get my attention, and that's going to get me to launch my boat. A lot of people in other areas should get their attention and get them up into the hills, especially also if we have an issue of animals doing that same kind of thing. Seabirds heading out to sea and other animals heading up into the hills. Now, this brings us along in a series of connections, really, because of the solar activity. NASA's really out there busting their butt. There's all kinds of stuff coming back, and they're a little bit sloppy. They're not as, also because of the cutbacks and so on, as we predicted, more and more stuff was going to leak out. And if you go on over to the enterprisemission.com, which is Richard Hoagland's site, you'll see that he's got a very interesting article about Phobos, which is the small moon that orbits Mars, in which he basically goes along to the idea of proving that it's a hollow artificial structure. And this would be the second one that we've identified in our solar system. The first one being the strange moon of Iapetus, which has this really odd, unexplainable otherwise than intelligent control at some point orbit, and other structures on it. Now, the interesting thing about the whole Phobos issue is that I'm beyond the fact that it's probably hollow and he's probably correct, and it sure looks like it's manufactured, and everything he says about it is very accurate. Within there, he talks about this idea that there's this Obama secret space summit coming up, unannounced as to what they're going to talk about, correct? You've heard about this?
Yes.
And his idea is that maybe they're going to talk about disclosure. Now, that brings me back around to the idea that I had the other day that, Ed Grimsley's out there getting people to buy these third-generation night vision goggles. And we've got fourth generation goggles coming up and fourth generation night vision scopes that are going to start falling in price relative to the general populace. And already I am in the possession of a set of the third generation goggles, and I've seen strange stuff whenever I can get a chemtrail free day, and that also coincides with a rain free day, appear very difficult. But every time I go out, I see some strange stuff overhead. And I'm in contact with a lot more people that are also getting these goggles and having a look at things, including people like Jay Widener. He went down with Ed and got trained by Ed. I couldn't do that for a bunch of different reasons, but in any event, at the time that he was with Ed, they saw like 80 objects that were basically unexplainable in our current rational understanding of the universe within the first hour. Plus, I've recently gotten some email from a guy in Scotland who's got a set of the goggles, and he's attempting to hook up with somebody who's got a video camera, he's in northern England, he's Scottish, but they're seeing over there, because it was really cold, they also had a number of really clear nights, and he's started recording this and has a log, and he's seeing an active space battle going on with what have to be some kind of bursting weapons and some kind of laser weapons. Now, that sort of coincides with what I've actually seen here as well, because in one instance, I was pretty sure I saw some kind of a bursty weapon, like phaser-on kind of thing, from one group of these three delta-shaped craft and this spherical craft that was or object that was quite a ways away. So that level of stuff is going on. So what if we have a situation where the spread of the technology of third-generation night vision goggles is actually putting pressure on the powers that be, because they're starting to get to a position where more and more people can look up and see what's going on, and therefore it's a question of, do I believe the Wolf Blitzer version of the world, or do I believe my own lying eyes? And, well, I'm going to believe my own eyes because I'm pretty sure they're not going to really be lying to me the way that Wolf Blitzer is. And so more and more of us that do this, and it may indeed be that we're going to face a situation here, and may be doing so now, where the powers that be have said to the minions, well, you better do disclosure. We're kind of in a bind.
That makes sense. That really does.
Well, you've got Ed out there. He's taking groups of people out. There's this guy in northern England who's got, basically the whole pub going out and looking at the space battle over them. We've got weird stuff in our data suggesting that the battle itself is going to heat up to the point where debris rains down on us poor fellows down here. And so the powers that be may indeed have finally reached a point where they reasonably don't have control of the situation anymore. Once again, going back to the whole balance of the universe kind of thing. And as being in Aikido, balance is never that sweet spot in the middle, because you only pass through that briefly, right? And so you're always swinging back and forth. And it's that kind of thing that we see in universe, not a steady state sort of a balance, but a more chaotic lurching towards balance.
Of course, if that is our state, it's going to be reflected that way. But the more that we remain a little steadier, that helps.
Yes. And that's why if you know how to roll, you'll be a lot